Well, Ted Kennedy had a vendetta against him, but Mary Jo Kopechne has one against Ted Kennedy. 이게 무슨 농담이냐면은 테드 케네디가 나에 대해서 이제 복수를 했다. 이렇게 보복을 했다. 카터가 얘기를 하니까. 그러나 메리 조 코페크니 has one against Ted Kennedy. 메리 조 코페크니는 그럼 케네디에 대해서 그 어떤 보복을 해야 될 일이 하나 있지 않느냐. Hey Marcy, what's a vendetta and why does Mary Jo Kopechne have one against Ted Kennedy? 이 Marcy, 그 벤데라는 게 무슨 말이며, 그리고 왜 메리 조 코페크니가 그 테드 케네디한테 대해서 그 복수를 할 일이냐 했대. Well, a vendetta is a personal debt. 어떤 개인적인 부채인데, not like money, but some reason why you would wanna get revenge on someone. 그 누구한텐가 왜 그 복수를 해야 되는지 그 어떤 이유, 돈에 의한 그 빚이 아니라 그런 그 어떤 복수를 하고 싶은 이유다. Mary Jo Kopechne wants to get Ted because he accidentally killed her in a car crash. 이 car crash, 그 자동차가 그 충돌, 연못으로 떨어졌죠. 그 car crash에 의해서 그 사고로다가 그 여자를 그 죽였다. 그때 그 희생당한 여자가 이제 메리 조 코페크니이기 때문에 테드 케네디한테 복수를 해야 될 거 아니야. She's dead? 그래서 죽었나? Yeah, I guess she'll have to take her revenge posthumously. 이 posthumously라는 거는 죽은 후에, 사후에 그 소리죠. 그러니까 죽었기 때문에 I guess she'll have to take her revenge posthumously. 죽은 다음에 하라. 이 posthumous trial. 그러면 그 유복자라는 소리죠. 또 posthumous works. posthumous works 하면은 그 유작, 유저라는 소리죠. That means after you die. 이 posthumously라는 건 죽은 다음에라는 뜻이다. Yeah, I know that. 나도 그거 안다. What? You're dead? 그 마시가 뭐라고? 그럼 네가 죽었단 말이야. No, no. I just know the meaning of that word. 나는 그 말의 의미를 안다. 이 정도로 가벼운 농담이죠. In many ways, of course, Carter is the same old Jimmy. 여러 면에서 여러 가지 방법으로 물론 카터는 옛날 올드 지미와 똑같다. 여전히 같다. Still indiscriminate with superlatives. Very wonderful. 아직도 indiscriminate라는 건 아주 무차별이다. 가리지 않는 아주 전체적인 전반에 걸쳐서 막 하는 그런 소리죠. 그러니까 indiscriminate with superlative라는 거는 아주 그 최고의 말. 즉 뭐냐면은 very wonderful. 이 카터는 이 뭘 보든지 very wonderful 이 소리를 잘하죠. 그러니까 아주 최고로 멋지다. 이렇게 superlative. 최고로 칭찬하는 말들을 여전히 아무 때나 가리지 않고 쓴다. Still using what a former aide calls his 100 ways to a better vocabulary approach to public speaking. Still wearing the same kind of 7-league heavy-soled wingtips he always has. 아직도 still using 사용하고 있다. What a former aide calls. 그 전직 그의 부관이 뭐라고 부르냐 부른 his 100 ways to a better vocabulary. 그러니까 아주 멋진 더 좋은 어휘를 쓰는 방법은 뭐 수백 가지가 있다. 이런 approach. 그러니까 이런 단어로다가 접근한다. to public speaking. 그러니까 이 카터는 그 아주 그 문자, 멋진 단어를 쓰기를 좋아한다. 이제 그 소리예요. 그러니까 퍼블릭, 대중연설에서도 여전히 그렇게 미사여구나 좋은 단어를 쓰려고 그러고. Still wearing the same kind of 7-league, heavy-soled wingtips he always has. 그가 항상 그 신고 있는, 가지고 있는 같은 종류의 7-league라는 건 이제 그 장화가 그 상당히 길다고 해. 그렇게 과장 표현한 겁니다. 1리그가 보통 3마일인데 7리그면은 벌써 한 뭐 6마일도 넘는 거 아닙니까? 이 길다는 걸 이렇게 한 거죠. 그리고 헤비 소울드 아주 그 앞창이 그 두꺼운 아주 그 앞창이 큰 두꺼운 윙팁스 그 구두 그 카우보이 구두 옆에 그 날개 같이 옆으로 튀어나온 걸 갖다 윙팁스라고 그러죠. 그런 구두를 아직도 신고 있고. But he's lost the hard edge. 그러나 그는 그 hard edge는 상실한 것 같다. 아주 hard edge라는 것은 아주 강력한 추진력, 뭘 하고야 말겠다는 아주 엄격한 그 끈기, 아주 그 그 부르조자같이 그 밀어댄다는 거 아주 강인한 의지 이렇게 하면 되겠죠. 그러나 그런 hard edge는 이제 상실한 것 같다. He is productive again. 다시 생산적이다. And seems finally at peace with the conflicts between his well-known born-again Christianity and his life as a public man. 그리고 그는 아주 마침내 평화로워진 것 같다. 그 conflicts, 충돌, 갈등, 그의 well-known born-again, 그의 유명한 그 born-again, 재림, Christianity, 기독교와 그의 life as a public man, 공인, 공적인 사람과 크리스찬이티 사이의 갈등에서 이제 드디어 평화로워진 것 같다는 뭐냐면은 이 기독교는 그 살상을 안 하게 돼 있는데 이 카터가 대통령 시절에 이란 인질 등 이런 전쟁 문제 이런 거로다가 기독교와 그의 그 대통령 사이의 그 임무 사이에서 이제 고민을 했다는데 이제 그런 게 없어진 것 같다 이거죠. 이제 대통령에서 퇴임하고 나니까. Says he on at sometimes touch subject. 그는 말한다. 그 때때로 그 터치한 아주 민감한 그 까다로운 문제에 대하여 그는 말한다. My Christian faith is just like breathing to me or like being a southerner or an American. 나의 그 기독교적인 신앙은 꼭 뭐와 같으냐면은 나에게는 호흡과도 같이 중요한 거다. 그러니까 나의 생명이다 그 소리죠. 호흡이니까. 또는 southerner, 남부 사람 또는 American. 미국 사람이요, 남부 사람이요, 나에 대한 숨, 이 세 가지 마찬가지로 이렇게 나의 크리스천 페이스는 이제 중요하다. It's all part of the same thing. 같은 것의 한 부분일 뿐이다. 그러니까 같은 것을 이루고 있는 한 개 한 개 각계 세 개 요소다 그 소리죠. It's all part of the same thing. The sharing, the compassion, the understanding, the dealing with the poor and the destitute and the outcast. 그러니까 나누어 갖기, 동정, 연민, 이해, 그리고 dealing with the poor and the destitute and the outcast. 버림받은, 추방당한 사람들과 궁핍, 가난, 그리고 가난한 사람들과 그 상대하는 것. 이런 것들이 모두 it's all part of the same thing. 한 가지에서 각기 구성 요소다. 그러니까 동시에 이런 걸 다 해야 된다 그 소리입니다. If there is a bit of the white man's burden in that, and if Carter sometimes falls a victim to Christianity's age-old catch-22, the sin of pride, well, it doesn't seem very important in the scale of things. 그리고 만약에 in that, 그렇게 이제 좋은 일들을 하는 것에 백인들의 일말의 책임이 있다면은 이 bit of the white man's burden이죠. 일말의 책임이 있고, 그리고 카터가 때때로 falls victim to something 하면 뭐뭐의 희생물이 되다죠. 기독교의 그 해묵은 catch-22의 희생물이 될다 할지라도 즉 the sin of pride 그것은 doesn't seem very important in the scale of things. 여러 가지로 볼 때 별로 중요한 게 아니다. 이 catch-22는 그 조셉 헬러의 원작 소설인데 그 내용은 그 2차 대전 때 조종사들이 출격 명령을 받을 때 기꺼이 나가겠다. 그러면 이것은 제정신이 아니다. 그래서 출격을 안 시켰고 너 출격할래? 그래. 나 겁이 나서 못 나가겠습니다. 그러면 이것이 정상이라 해가지고 그 사람을 출격시키고 그랬죠. 그래서 자기 본의에 반해서 하고 싶으면 못하고 못한다 그러면은 강요로 다 해야 됐고 이런 역설적 경우에 이 말이 사용이 된 건데 그래서 그때부터 이 catch-22 situation이라는 말이 나왔죠. 그러니까 여기에서는 catch-22를 sin of pride라고 그랬는데 the sin of pride. 즉 기독교인은 반드시 선행을 베풀어야 되는데 선행을 베풀면은 우쭐해지고 거만해지죠. 그래서 기독교인을 안 하면은 고만인데 기독교인을 하자니 선행을 베풀어야 되고 선행을 베풀어야 되자니 고뇌를 하게 되고 우쭐해져서 이렇게 해서 이제 카터가 그 희생이 된다 그 소리죠. catch-22에 그렇게 되더라도 그건 별거 아니다 그 소리죠. It doesn't seem very important in a scale of things, and neither does the Carter presidency in retrospect. 회거해 보건데 뭐 카터의 전직 대통령직도 뭐 그 별게 아니다, 중요한 게 아니다라고 이제 카터를 또 비난했죠. And you get the feeling that maybe this is what he thought the presidency would be like. All good works, no Ted Kennedys or Tip O'Neills or bureaucrats or special interests. 아마 여러분도 그런 느낌을 갖게 될 것이다. 카터가 아마 이것이 그 대통령직이라는 것도 이런 게 아니냐라고 생각했을 거라는 느낌을 우리는 받을 것이다. 그죠? All good works, 좋은 일만 있지 대통령을 하더라도 테드 케네디 같은 보복 거는 사람도 없고 팁 오닐 같은 자기 정치에 늘 반대하는 사람도 없고 관리들 또는 그 특별 이해 집단 이런 것들은 없고 그저 오로지 좋은 일만 있을 거라고 그 대통령직에 이렇게 생각했을 것이다. 언제 when he set out from plains many years ago 여러 해 전에 플레인으로부터 이제 대통령 당선돼가지고 백악관을 향해서 출발할 때 그때는 naively determined against the odds to make a difference. 아마 순진하게도 결의에 차가지고 이제 대통령이 새로 당선됐으니까 against the odds라는 거는 가망성이 없다. 그 승산 가망성에 거역해서 그러니까 어림도 없을 텐데 아마 순진하게도 내가 가면 대통령이 돼가지고 to make a difference 어떤 새로운 지금까지보다는 어떤 큰 차이를 만들겠다. 그러니까 지가 뭔가 새로운 일을 하겠다라고 순진하게 결심을 해가지고 아마 백악관을 향해서 출발했을 거다. 그 소리죠. Against us to make a difference, but Billy beat him to the punch. 어림도 없이 make a difference다. 그러나 빌리가 그 동생이 beat him to the punch는 선수를 쳤다. 이건 꼰트에서 나오는 말이죠. 상대가 펀치를 가하려고 그럴 때 자기가 쳐서 상대를 녹다운 시킨다. 그 소리입니다. 빌리가 beat him to the punch. What do they mean, beat him to the punch? That means he finished first. 그가 먼저 끝냈다는 거다. 그러니까 먼저 knockdown 시켰다죠. He accomplished it before Jimmy. 지미 전에 그 make a difference 했다고 소리입니다. So Billy made a difference before Jimmy did. Right, Billy was always in trouble and always in the news. 빌리는 always in the trouble, 항상 말썽을 피웠고 always in the news, 항상 뉴스의 대상이 되었다. Sometimes he was more famous than his president brother. 때때로 어떤 때는 그는 형인 대통령 형보다도 더 유명했다. Even more famous than me, 나보다 더 유명했냐? You're not famous, George. Yeah, but I can dream. 그러나 유명해지고 싶다고 꿈을 한번 꿀 수 있는 거 아니냐. 그래서 이 동생이 항상 형을 앞질러서 make a difference를 했다. 그래서 뉴스의 그 대상인물이 되고 했다. 그 소리죠. 이렇게 해서 타임 그 강의 시리즈 제 1번 시리즈의 전체 강의를 마치겠습니다. 그러면 그 주임 파워가 전체 본문을 그 유창한 그 리딩으로 읽겠으니까 처음부터 끝까지 다시 한번 주의 깊게 들어보시기 바랍니다.
Profile by Stanley W. Cloud. Hail to the ex-chief. Despite all his troubles in the White House, Jimmy Carter, yes, Jimmy Carter, may be the best former president America has ever had. In Ojubi, Ghana, on a sweltering African afternoon, James Earl Carter, Jr. sits at one end of a large grassy field and acknowledges the applause of farmers gathered around the perimeter. Many of the farmers have samples of their harvest in baskets before them: corn, sorghum, squash, fruit. Large clouds play tag in the blue sky overhead, while at the opposite end of the field, the stern chiefs of several local villages sit dressed in traditional robes, each carrying a staff topped by a gilt talisman of his authority. On the platform in front of Carter, a local agricultural official in tan trousers and a T-shirt bends to speak into a microphone. President Carter, he says, we are very grateful to you. Because of what you have done for the past 2 years, maize has been very wonderfully produced in this area. This is wonderful. In fact, we love you. Jimmy Carter grins. Jimmy Carter is a happy man. Despite everything, despite his disappointing presidency in the Iran hostage crisis, which helped deliver him into Ronald Reagan's eager hands, despite the scorn of various pundits and self-appointed guardians of Washington society, despite his own manifest and manifold weaknesses as a politician, despite lust in my heart, malaise, and killer rabbits, Carter has discovered life after the White House. More than that, he has redefined the meaning and purpose of the modern ex-presidency. While Reagan peddles his time and talents to the highest bidder, and Gerald Ford perfects his putt, and Richard Nixon struggles to gain a toehold in history, Carter, like some jazzed superhero, circles the globe at 30,000 feet, seeking opportunities to do good. And finding plenty of time. One moment he's in China, trying to mediate between the leaders of Beijing and their unhappy Tibetan subjects. The next he's in Panama, prowling the streets before dawn on Election Day, paying a surprise call on the vote counters, bellowing at them in his modest Spanish, "Are you honest people, or are you thieves?" and emerging to denounce Manuel Noriega for taking the elections by fraud. Then, almost before you know it, Carter is swooping down on sub-Saharan Africa, trying to help eradicate disease or persuade farmers to enlist in the Green Revolution. And this week in Atlanta, the former president is to convene negotiations, after a year of personal diplomacy, between the Marxist-Leninist government of Ethiopia and the Eritrean rebels to end a quarter-century of civil war. With all this activity, Carter has emerged as the best ex-president the U.S. has had since Herbert Hoover, another one-termer whose failures in office did not prevent him from decades of productive public service afterward. In a way, Carter has used the White House as a stepping stone to better things and better days. Says Carter, "As president, I wouldn't have had time to do all the things I'm doing now." Busy as he is, Carter, who will turn 65 next month, and his marginally less hyperactive wife Rosalind, who turned 62 last month, do manage to find time for more traditional pastimes. Tennis on their backyard court in Plains, Georgia, for example, and early morning jogs wherever they may happen to be. The Carters also still read a fair amount. He was so impressed with John le Carre's new novel, The Russia House, that he's reading Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, and wishing he could meet the author. She has just completed Gabriel Garcia Marquez's Love in the Time of Cholera. And there is bird watching in Africa, fly fishing from Colorado to the Andes, and furniture making in Carter's home workshop in Plains, where he has turned out, among other handsome pieces, the canopied four-poster bed he and Rosalind, whom he often calls Rosie, share. But leisure time has never been that important to Carter. If he and Rosalind, having written no fewer than 6 books between them since 1981, are giving their word processors a rest for a while, both still teach Sunday school whenever they're home, and both periodically don their carpenter's aprons, pack up their hammers, saws, and chisels, and travel to the South Bronx or Philadelphia or, next year, Tijuana, Mexico, to help build low-cost housing. More than anything else, the picture of Jimmy Carter wearing a baseball cap, faded jeans, and running shoes, and helping build a new house like a good neighbor at a Georgia barn raising, captures the essence of his ex-presidency. Not that he and Rosalind haven't had their share of defeats and sadness. The closely spaced deaths in 1983 of his younger sister Ruth of cancer and his famous mother Miss Lillian, followed by the loss of his antic younger brother Billy last year. Even so, in the couple's 1987 book Everything to Gain, Rosalind wrote, "If we have not achieved our early dreams, we must either find new ones or see what we can salvage from the old. If we have accomplished what we set out to do in our youth, then we need not weep like Alexander the Great that we have no more worlds to conquer. There is clearly much left to be done, and whatever else we are going to do, we had better get on with it." It is a lesson the Carters learned the hard way. After the dramatic improbability of Carter's victorious 1976 presidential campaign, losing the 1980 election to Ronald Reagan was a terrible blow. The incoming first couple didn't make things any easier. During the transition, the Reagans suggested that the Carters should vacate the White House early to give Nancy more time for redecorating, a notion the Carters rejected out of hand. "We were elected to serve a full term," says a still angry Rosalind, "and we were going to serve a full term." Carter was wounded again when he and fellow former Presidents Nixon and Ford, recruited to represent President Reagan at Anwar Sadat's funeral, were assigned to the relatively cramped tail section of Air Force One. So the 3 ex-presidents, none of them then comfortable in the other's presence, sat in nervous silence for most of the trip to Cairo. On the way back, however, Carter and Ford began forming what became a close friendship. Adjusting to life back in Plains was something of a trial as well. The Carters worked successfully to reverse the damage that hookerism and celebrity had done to the tiny Georgia hamlet. And Jimmy parted in his workshop and began organizing his papers in preparation for the writing his 1982 memoir, Keeping Faith. Otherwise, there seemed little to do but brood. The famous Carter Peanut Warehouse has long since been sold for $1.2 million. The 2,000-acre Carter farm, actually it's 2 farms, was largely worked by lessees. With enforced idleness came more self-doubt and self-pity. Says a friend, Carter was pretty much of a pain in the ass at the time. He needed a lot of hand-holding and reassurance. The creation of the Carter Presidential Center in Atlanta turned out to be crucial to his self-rehabilitation. With his usual obsessive attention to detail, he envisioned the center not just as another presidential library, but as a clearinghouse of ideas and programs intended to solve international problems and crisis. The idea became reality when the center was established at Emory University in 1982, and even more so when its permanent headquarters opened in 1986. Located on 30 acres of woods and gentle hills in the Virginia Highlands section of Atlanta, it consists of 4 low-profile, circular pavilions connected by interior walkways and exterior colonnades, all in a modern neo-federalist style with faint echoes of the White House and fainter echoes of Jefferson's Monticello. Inside, the Carters have adjoining offices plus a small but comfortable apartment. Apart from the library and museum, operated by the federal government, the Carter Center, with an annual budget of $16 million and a staff of 125, is financed by private donations, mostly from abroad. The center's many programs form the agenda of Carter's ex-presidency. Notable among them is Global 2000 Incorporated, an international aid organization aimed at improving disease control and agricultural productivity in third world countries. The work is enhanced by the leadership of Norman Borlaug, an agronomist whose efforts to bring the Green Revolution to India and Pakistan won him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970, and Dr. William H. Fogg, the Carter Center's executive director, who played a major role in worldwide eradication of smallpox. Global 2000's principal financial backer is Ryoichi Sasakawa, 90, a Japanese multimillionaire industrialist whose checkered resume features extreme right-wing imperialist activities in Japan during the 1930s, but whose later years have been devoted largely to supporting charitable causes. The key to Global 2000 and the Center's other programs is Carter himself. His hair may be thinner and grayer these days, his face more deeply etched, but he is plainly in charge. As a former president, he is able to gain access to foreign leaders, thereby often ensuring his programs the kind of high-level support on which success depends. On a 10-day trip to Africa in July, Carter, the first active U.S. president ever to set foot in the sub-Saharan part of the continent, swept from the Sudan and Ethiopia, back to the Sudan and on to Zimbabwe, Zambia, Nigeria, and Ghana. The warm receptions he received from the heads of government were doubtless prompted in part by the many trappings of power he brought with him, including Secret Service protection and an opulent private Boeing 727, complete with crew and a walnut-paneled double bedroom. The plane is donated by the London-based Bank of Credit and Commerce International, another Carter Center backer. Carter, the unassuming plains populist who once banned "Hail to the Chief" and famously carried his own suit bag, retains a modest personal style, but today seems far more comfortable with his perks. Still, as he said shortly after arriving in Africa, "I didn't come here in a position of leadership, I came in a position of fellowship." In Addis Ababa, where he stayed in Haile Selassie's decaying old palace, he spent 2 hours with Ethiopia's President Mengistu Haile Mariam, putting the finishing touches on arrangements for this week's peace talks. In the Sudan, Carter had an hour with Lieutenant General Omar Hassan Ahmad al-Bashir, who only 4 weeks earlier had overthrown the elected government of Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi to urge negotiations in that country's civil war. In Zambia, Carter launched at the State House with President Kenneth Kaunda, one of the last of the old African independence movement leaders, who hailed his guest not only as a great person, but a great servant of God and man, while outside impalas and peacocks roamed the grounds and private golf course. 4 years ago, when Carter, Borlaug, and Sasakawa began trying to bring the Green Revolution to Africa, they signed up a paltry 40 farmers in 4 countries, the Sudan, Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia. This year, there are 85,000 plus uncounted others who, while not officially participating, have begun to use the same improved seeds, fertilizers, and farming methods that have yielded such impressive results for their neighbors, 300 to 400% increases in corn, sorghum, and millet. Although Carter needs and seeks the support of the governments in the countries where his programs are established, his team stresses local administration and the direct involvement of small-scale farmers, whose minds have been focused wonderfully by recent African famines. At a 200-acre farm in Ojubi, about an hour's drive from Ghana's capital, Accra, Carter inspected a new corn crop literally as high as an elephant's eye. With a farmer's knowing touch, he plucked ears from the stalks, peeled back the husks, and admired the golden kernels. This year, 46 farmers are working the plot of dry yet newly fertile land. But Carter made a point of introducing one of only 2 farmers who were involved when the project began in 1987, a woman named Sarah Dazi. "As you know," Carter said with his large and famous smile, "in our country the women also take the lead." From there, he proceeded to a nearby celebration of Global 2000's early success. He posed for pictures with farmers and their wives and applauded as brilliantly clad stilt dancers gyrated on their 15-foot thin wooden limbs to the rhythms of a native band. Later, Carter was installed with great pomp as an honorary village chief. To signify his new office, he was given a chief's robe and a hand-carved wooden stool decorated with tribal symbols of Nyansapao, cooperation. For Carter, improved agricultural output is closely linked to the disease control measures he is also promoting. Seriously ill farmers, he reasons, cannot plant and harvest. Polio and river blindness are two major afflictions that the team hopes eventually to eliminate. But as a demonstration project, Global 2000 has first targeted the vulnerable life cycle of the guinea worm. Once common in many parts of the world, the worm, which is ingested in drinking water drawn from ponds, is today confined to a belt across Central Africa and the subcontinent where it severely incapacitates some 10 million people each year. The Carter Center hopes to eradicate the guinea worm in 6 years, mainly by educating villagers to filter or boil pond water before drinking it and by providing deep wells to replace freshwater ponds. Progress has already been made. Carter visited villages in Nigeria and Ghana that have, with Global 2000's assistance, virtually wiped out the worm. In a Nigerian village, he stood beside the local pond, under a canopy of lush green trees, and reminded the villagers that the pond was still infested with the worm's nearly invisible larva. While photographers snapped pictures, he urged the villagers not to drink from the pond unless they first used the fine mesh filters distributed by Global 2000. Beside him stood a small boy, his leg badly swollen with a guinea worm infection. Not all the villages Carter visited were completely satisfied with his help. In one, following the usual dancing and singing, the chief rose to speak. "You arrived last year from out of the blue," he said to Carter, "and you gave us a well and a pump. The village appreciated that, but there was this one small problem. Because the well is only 40 feet deep, it goes dry 3 months out of the year. We know that you, Mr. President," said the chief, "will not be happy with a half-measure solution to our problem." On the spot, Carter convened a meeting with his advisors and promptly announced that the well would be drilled to 70 feet. The chief smiled. The villagers cheered. Next morning, the former president began the return trip to Plains. He was relaxed and voluble about his new life, about his future plans. He will never again run for public office, he insists, about the problems he had as president. Ted Kennedy had a vendetta against me, and about Africa. "I find Africa to be the most challenging and intriguing of any place in the world," he said. "It's fascinating to meet with so many first- and second-generation revolutionaries." Carter has no natural enemies anymore, which is liberating. If he sometimes accepts money from donors with dubious backgrounds, Saskatchewan, for example, or the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, which has been indicted on money laundering charges, no one complains, at least not if the money goes to worthy causes. In many ways, of course, Carter is the same old Jimmy, still indiscriminate with superlatives, very wonderful, still using what a former aide called his 100 ways to a better vocabulary approach to public speaking, still wearing the same kind of 7-league, heavy-soled wingtips he always has. But he's lost the hard edge. He's productive again, and seems finally at peace with the conflicts between his well-known born-again Christianity and his life as a public man. Says he is on that sometimes touchy subject, "My Christian faith is just like breathing to me, or like being a Southerner or an American. It's all part of the same thing. The sharing, the compassion, the understanding, the dealing with the poor and the destitute and the outcasts." If there is a bit of the white man's burden in that, and if Carter sometimes falls victim to Christianity's age-old catch-22, the sin of pride, well, it doesn't seem very important in the scale of things. And you get the feeling that maybe this is what he had thought the presidency would be like: all good works, no Ted Kennedys or Tip O'Neills or bureaucrats or special interests, when he set out from Plains many years ago, naively determined, against the odds, to make a difference.